Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the lesson 5A, which is Caroline Radway's case study today. Now so Caroline, blood typo, 7 out of 10, well-being score, currently breastfeeding, a 7-month-old. Concerns, not too many concerns, but conscious of skin aging. We just made her reflect on internal aging and some trouble with her knee as well, and she's had a bit of trouble for the last 6 years, and I guess a little bit concerned with that. And like most girls, she's like to drop a couple of kilos as well. But I mean that's not a massive concern for her. Okay. All right. So what we're going to do, we're going to have a look through the bloods first, and as always, the top left here is what we're looking at as a perfect example of a dry blood sample. And for those of you that haven't seen this before, I'll say it again, very rarely do we ever see blood looking this good. Okay, we all live in a toxic world. We breathe the air outside, there's fumes, there's car fumes, diesel fumes, so we're always going to get something going on, and I rarely ever do I see blood this good. But that's the benchmark, if you like. All right. So what am I looking at over here? What have I photographed here? There's a little bit of stuff going on with Caroline. So it's quite interesting. If we come over to number one, one of the first things I see here on number one, if you look on the edges, I'm going to try and do a little bit of a mark here. If you have a look along, okay, hang on. If we have a look, all right, hang on, this is not going to work. Let's have a look. If we have a look along the edge there, we can see this is the edge of the sample. We really want to see a well-defined edge. And if you look up to the right, you can see all these sort of speckles here. These are red blood cells that are sort of streamed across the glass when Caroline took the sample. And when this happens, it's a good sign of vitamin C deficiency. Well, maybe not even vitamin C deficiency, but the body maybe not even using vitamin C, and there could be a reason for that, which we'll talk about in a minute. I look at vitamin C as the glue that holds us together. Okay, it's very, very important for connective tissue, and when we have good vitamin C levels, or the body is utilizing vitamin C, we tend to get these dry blood samples tend to stay together pretty well, and we end up with a quite firm, defined edge. If you look at number 3, you can also see at the edge there too. If we look along the edge like this, we can see also that the edge is not very defined, and at number 2 you can see the same thing. So the first clue there, as soon as I see this, is what's going on with vitamin C, or maybe what's going on with cell membranes. Maybe we've got a bit of a catabolic imbalance going on here. Okay, because when we're catabolic, our body's breaking down. It doesn't utilize vitamin C. Okay, so typically if you did a vitamin C test, and there's a number of ways of doing this, and they're all pretty inaccurate if you like, you'll find when someone's in a catabolic mode, their body doesn't utilize vitamin C very well, and it's releasing a lot straight out with the urine. And when that happens, when the catabolic, we're also breaking down. Our body's breaking down as opposed to holding on or holding together. So you can see just from these dry blood cells, these couple of samples here alone, that the body isn't really holding together very well. Okay, these are all red blood cells that have just, they should have held together much easier. Okay, if we look at number 2, number 3, there's some obvious markings there. If you look at number 2 here, we've got these 3 areas here. If we look at the slide, you would see these are like 3D. If you look up number 3, there's a couple there too, and there's a bit of an area over here which we'll talk about in a second. So what we're looking at here typically is, when I see this, is typically cardiovascular stress. I've talked about this before, and when I say cardiovascular stress, I don't mean this person is going to be suffering cardiovascular disease, or they're going to have a heart attack or anything like that. What I'm really talking about is that the cardiovascular system is working a little bit harder than it should do, and it's putting stress on the whole system. And when this happens, and I see this a lot, we tend to have a little bit more fatigue than we would normally normally experience. Now, this isn't a massive problem for Caroline, so what I'm suggesting here is this is something that's showing up that if not addressed, it's something that in the future is going to be maybe a problem that will manifest. We've got to remember when we're looking at the dry blood, and when we're looking at blood, and when we're looking at even some of these numbers, what we're actually doing is looking into the future, okay? Because when we look this close, we can see things starting to happen. The body's starting to express, I guess, these stresses, and if they're not being experienced at the physical level, you can almost guarantee that at some point in the future they will be. All right, so this is like looking into the future sometimes when we're looking at blood, especially when we're looking at live blood. Okay, the dry blood tends to be a little bit more concrete. Okay, it's a little bit more deeper seated stuff, whereas the live blood is a little bit more what's going on right now, what's going on today. It's a little bit more subjective, but even then we can start seeing some clues as to, well, what's going to happen in the future, what's happening. And we're looking into the glass ball, if you like. So cardiovascular stress. Now, where does this cardiovascular stress come from? Well, when I first see this, my first thought is always going to be poor digestion, because once we start, well, I'll step back a bit. Poor digestion. When I see these, I'm looking at high ammonia. Okay, and when I'm thinking about high ammonias in the blood system, I'm thinking, well, where does this high ammonia come from? Because high ammonia or ammonia is very viscous, it's very thick. And this is why it puts stress on the cardiovascular system. It's not only very thick and makes the blood more viscous, it's very toxic and it's very alkaline, so it slows down energy as well. But the main thing is it just makes the heart work harder. And typically when I'm talking to a client with these sorts of patterns, we'll have a client saying, well, when I wake up in the morning, and I sleep all night, but I don't feel rested. I feel like I've been playing tennis all night, and then that's because the heart's working so hard to pump around blood that really is like our heart is designed to pump blood around the body. The viscosity is sort of like red wine, if you like. But what it's doing here is pumping blood around the viscosity of crude oil. So it's thicker, it's harder to pump, it puts more stress on the cardiovascular system. It doesn't mean it's a big problem. I mean, the heart is a very strong muscle. It's a big muscle. But what it does do is typically it takes a lot of resources, a lot of energy to do this. And if we're taking energy away from other parts of the body to be able to pump crude oil around the body as opposed to red wine, well, this is not only unnecessary, it also it causes other issues, or it may cause other issues in other parts of the body where the body can't heal as well as it could. Okay, so there's a couple of signs there, and once again, when I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, as I start looking at these bloods, I'm already thinking, what am I going to be seeing? I'm looking at patterns. What am I going to start seeing when I start looking at the numbers? What am I going to start seeing when I start looking at the imbalance guide? And by the time I get to the imbalance guide, the odds are I've already got a fair idea. Okay, not much else going on here, not on these two pictures anyway. Let's go to the next. Okay, a little bit more interesting on these pages, but there's something coming up, and they're coming up pretty consistently. There's a little bit of, if you look at number 4, if you look over here, we've also got a little bit of this cardiovascular stuff going on. Okay, that's coming through. But what I'm seeing here is just a little bit of polymerized protein puddle. This is where cellular breakdown is just a little bit over the top, well, a little bit more than what it should be. And the location of where these stresses are can be quite important, because when we see it's obviously localized, it's not spread out throughout the whole sample. It's sort of localized, and it tends to be just a little bit just out from the center. Okay, and that can mean something. We'll talk about that in a second. I'm not too concerned about the severity of these stresses, because it's not sort of the puddles, or the protein puddles, which I call these little things, aren't that big. But the first thing I do when I see these pictures is I zoom in, and what I've done on the right hand side, you can see here, I've zoomed in to say, well, first thing I want to look at is, do we have any sialic acid beads? Okay, because sialic acid beads are going to give us an idea or a bit of a reflection as to the state of the tissues, and do we have some tissue acidosis going on. And if you have a look here, it's very hard to tell, but over here there's a little round circle there, round bead, and there's another one there, and I think there's just about one just in here. Okay, so there's a little bit of sialic acid bead. So the first thing I'm going to ask or mention to the client is about soreness in the muscle tissues and whatnot, and to try and get a bit of an idea as to, you know, is this an issue or not. And when I talked to Caroline, interestingly enough, one of the things that she researched, and I don't know if she did this when she saw the bloods or she did this before, is breastfeeding mums tend to produce more sialic acid than you know, other times. So this explains things a little bit, and it really sort of, and when I'm looking at other numbers, I'm not seeing a really big problem with tissue acidosis as such. So I guess this just emphasizes the importance of asking questions, talking to the client, and not just relying on the numbers or not just relying on the pictures. Okay, you know, we have to use our own knowledge and our own experience and our own thinking, and not just jump to conclusions. Because one of the things it was drummed into us when we did the training in Chicago with biomedics was, make sure you do the complete testing first and you talk to the client before you really start finalize any conclusions as far as what you think you're seeing. Because if you start up front and you start seeing these things, you jump on them, you go like, oh, I know what's going on, you can almost guarantee you're going to be wrong. So you know, this is not everything, nothing is set in concrete. Okay, so talk to the client, and I talked to the client, and we talked about the sialic acid beads, which was new to me, very, very interesting, and that sort of explains things. But one of the things I'm really interested in is, well, what's going on here? It's the location. The location is just out from the center. Okay, and when I see this, as we come in from the outside, outside of the sample inwards, okay, we're coming from the outer side of the body, the skin, the fingers, the head, your outer extremities. As we're coming in towards the center, which is the center typically is our reproductive organs. It's our gut. It's sort of in that area. And I'm going to show you a picture in a minute, which will sort of point this out a little bit more clearer. But you can see there's just a little bit out from the center, a little bit out to the center. Okay, and this can be quite significant because it's telling me something. It's localized, and we can get a bit of an idea of, well, where in the body is this coming from. Okay, a little bit of, if you look at number 5, there's just a few other little bits of polymerized protein puddles, but no big deal. I'm not that concerned. If you look at number 7, you can see the color. It's pretty brown. It's not really that red. So, you know, the state of the internal terrain, the blood, you know, isn't in the greatest conditions as it could be too. So that may be just another clue that we can look at as we go further. Okay. Number 8 and number 9, you can see with number 8, you can see these blood cells that have streamed across the glass here. This is just another good example of the body not holding things together. Okay, so either you're not getting the vitamin C, or your body's not holding on to vitamin C. And your body's not holding on to vitamin C, there's a good chance that this person is quite a catabolic state right now. Okay, if we come over to number 9, we can see, I've zoomed in here, and it's very hard to tell, but there's a couple of there's one there, and I think there was another one somewhere. It's a little bit hard to tell. When you do this all the time, you really pick these out pretty easily. There's a few patches of crappy stuff here. I'm not too concerned about that. But when I see these little round circles, or they're sort of round with a black halo, this is a strong indication of liver stress. Okay, so you know, most people I work with, well, nearly everybody I work with, we're going to have some liver's everything. So I don't always see these little black halos. But when I do, it's a strong indication that the liver is struggling a little bit. Okay. Now, if we come over to this page, this is what I talked about just now. This is the map, if you like, that we can use to get a bit of an idea for localized areas of stress. Okay, and you might want to just spend a little bit of time looking at this and pausing it when you're watching this video, and just have a read through. So as you can see from the outer edge, chemical and metal toxicity. This is where once again, when we take this sample, and the reason why when we take the pinprick and we allow the little bead of blood to sit there just for a few seconds before we take the sample, what's happening is we're getting a lot of spinning, a lot of vibration, a lot of sort of centrifugal sort of action going, where the heavier particles are spinning towards the outer edges of the sample. Okay, this is why we have chemical and metal toxicity on the outer edge of the sample, because these are the heavier particles and they tend to work their way to the outer edge. And so when we squash down the glass and we spread it out, this is why we can sort of start to see, well, on the outer edge we've got the heavier particles, and we know they've done all this testing to understand the molecular weight of all these different particles and where they come from in the body, and the lightest particles come from the middle, and as we come out, once again, we're coming out like from the gut backwards. Of great interest, and this is something I really didn't pick up. I was focusing more on breast to start with, because Caroline was talking about sialic acid beads and the fact that breastfeeding creates more sialic acid beads, and I thought of that, well, maybe this is very close to the breast area, and I think if we have a look at the breast, see it's in this area here, a little bit further out. Okay, so I was a little bit off there, and when I started going through this again to prepare for this this session, I had another look, and I had another look at my picture here to just give me this map, if you like, to give me a bit of an idea of, well, are we talking about breast, or are we talking about the pancreas? Because the pancreas is just a little bit further in. And if we have a look at this one here, it's a bit hard to draw a circle. It's a bit messy. I'm sorry about that. This is the center, and we come out just to the edge of the center. It can be anywhere in this circle. It doesn't have to be on that spot, on that, there. It could be here, but it's got to be in that radius. I think we've got some stuff going on with the pancreas. Okay, and I've talked to Caroline about that, and we're going to be doing some more testing. And for obvious reasons, for the those of you that know, with my background and with my partner, with the issues with the pancreas, this is something I really jump on. It's not something to be overly concerned with right now, but it's something to be cautious about. Just to say, well, hang on, with the pancreas, let's just think about this. We know we've got some liver issues. If we've got some liver issues, we've probably got some gallbladder issues. If we've got some gallbladder issues, we've probably got some pancreas issues. If we have some pancreas issues, we've probably got some sugar processing issues. So these are all the things I'm thinking when I'm going through this. It's going through my mind. Okay, so as we get through and I start putting the numbers in, I'm starting to see these patterns to emerge. Okay, one of the things we need to be aware of with the gallbladder and pancreas, they work together. They work in sync, if you like. So when one's stressed, the other sort of backs the other one up. Okay, so if we have a gallbladder issue, we can almost guarantee that the pancreas is going to be pushed as well. And if we look, I haven't got a picture here, but if you have a look at the picture of where the bile duct comes out, and where the pancreas comes out and goes into the intestines, the small intestines, you can see they're very, very close. They almost are exactly opposite each other. Okay, and this is where quite often we can have a problem when we have gallstones. What will quite happen is a gallstone will come out of the bile duct and it will lodge into the pancreatic duct and in the pancreas duct, okay, or the pancreatic duct. And when this happens, this is when we can start getting pancreatitis and all these sorts of issues, okay? And this is where, obviously we don't want this to happen. And I'm not saying this is happening, but what I am saying is there's a bit of stress coming through here. This is an absolute gift to be seeing this, because if it is a problem, we can jump on it now and we can turn it around before it becomes anything more, anything of a major problem. And at the end of the day, Caroline isn't experiencing really any serious ill health effects. It's not a this is something that I think is just a warning, and we need to be cautious and we need to look a bit further, and we maybe need to do a little bit more testing just to confirm a few things, and I guess be aware of it and be mindful. And just being mindful of this stuff can help, because as Caroline moves forward, she's going to be mindful of this stuff, and any other little things happening, I'm like, well, you know what? It could be something going on with the pancreas, and we don't want that to happen. Okay, so I'm thinking maybe a little bit of pancreas. Okay, if that's the case, and we have some gallbladder issues, if we're going to have gallbladder issues, we're going to have liver issues. Okay, because it's the liver that dumps its gunk into the gallbladder. Bile is it's a number of things. I know there's a lot of stuff that makes bile. But essentially, this is a dumping ground of the liver. All right. So if we're going to have gallbladder, and so many people have gallbladder issues. Okay, gallbladder. First thing I'm going to think of with gallbladder issues is lipids, because bile is responsible for emulsifying lipids. What's going to happen if we have problems with lipids? The next thing I'm going to look at is cell membranes. All right. Do we have a cell membrane imbalance? And we do, of course. And we'll see that in a minute. So these are the things I'm thinking, all right? This is about going through and having some logical thinking and putting two and two together. And when you start seeing the answers coming back in the pattern that you are thinking, you can be quite sure and pretty well positive that there's something going on there, and you're looking for these clues, okay? Because the gallbladder, gallstones, backing up into the liver gets congested. We know the liver's got stresses, or the liver's going to be congested. What's going to happen? The liver's going to put stuff back into the bloodstream. What's going to happen when we put stuff back into the bloodstream to send it around for another circuit to give it another guide? We're going to have crap in the bloodstream. All right. And if you look at number 7 here, you can see the coloration of this blood. It's pretty dull. It's not great. It's not robust. It's not very vital. Okay. So once again, this is what I'm looking at. I can't see the live blood. I'm not doing a test on the live blood, so I can't see how much crap is floating around, but I can almost guarantee there is. Okay. The other thing too, if you look at number 4 and number 6, darker area in the middle is always to do with dysbiosis, toxic gut, a bit of gut stuff going on. All right. If we're going to have digestive issues, excuse me, we're going to have some gut issues, you can almost guarantee. And if we're going to have some gut issues, we're going to have probably an imbalance of bacteria, and we're going to have that. We're probably going to have a few parasites and whatnot as well, maybe. And so these are the sorts of things I ask when I'm going through and talking to the client. Okay, so just remember, we don't do this testing in isolation as such. Okay. Especially when we start going through the numbers and we start coming up with these protocols, we need to talk to the client. You can almost guarantee, once I start talking to the clients, I start going through, by the time we get to the protocol, we've made a few adjustments, because I've learned a little bit more, we've had a few discussions, and we put a few more pieces of the jigsaw puzzle together, and we sort of finalize a few things. Okay. All right, very quickly, what are we going to, this is just, so we've gone from the blood, and then I'm going to have a look at just an overview of the imbalance guide. Okay, this is where all the questionnaire and the self-testing numbers come through. And the first thing I do when I look at this, I thought, whoa, there's not a lot going on. You know, I'm a little bit surprised. The first thing I say to Caroline is, what's going on? I would normally think, well, why is this person doing any testing? Well, we know there's something going on because of the blood. But what's happening here, it's not necessarily coming through in the numbers right yet. Okay, so once again, this is just another example of, sometimes when you look at this blood, especially the dry blood, you're looking into the future. And if we see stuff, we have a gift, because it's not coming through in the numbers. And this is not coming through with Caroline too. She's feeling pretty well okay, no big deal, just a few little things going on. But I can guarantee, if we don't start addressing some of these things, that they will start manifesting, because they are on a physical level. And they already are manifesting at the blood level. It won't be long before they start manifesting on the physical level. So looking at these pictures, very little coming up. But what has come up is quite important. I'm going to go through in detail in a minute, but I like to have a bit of an overview first. And what have we got? Electrolyte deficiency, a bit of that coming up. If we have we'll talk about that in a second. A little bit of catabolic for sure. Okay. Maybe a little bit of fat burning, a bit of slow oxidizing. There's not much coming up there. but we'll talk about that in a second, and a little bit of digestive stuff. Once again, I would expect to see more come through. The reason I haven't is because it just hasn't manifested to that point where Caroline has been sort of physically aware of this happening. This is why when we start being physically aware, we start getting all these digestive issues. It hasn't just happened. This stuff has been going on for a long time. And by going through some of this testing and looking at the dry bloods, we can see that. This is the power of this testing. It's enormously powerful because we're seeing things well in advance. Let's have a little bit of close-up. You look at the top left, the most important balance of all is electrolyte balance. So we've covered this a couple of sessions ago. And if you look on the left, there's only one marker that's come up that's in a red box, which is the resting pulse, okay, which is a bit low. But the most important thing here is this resting to standing pulse difference. It's greater than 12. When this comes up, something is going on with electrolytes, okay? Regardless of how many red boxes I have coming up here, I'm always very, very interested to see if this green box pops up, because this is a strong marker to say something's going on, boy. Let's just look a little bit deeper. Blood pressures aren't too bad. 114, I'm not that concerned about that, but something is happening. So when I see this, and I think, well, what's going on? You know, we've got 114 systolic. We've got a resting to standing difference of 12. There's something going on here. So we've got to start thinking, and we think back to the bloods, and we think back to the state of the blood, and think back to the liver and the gallbladder, and think, well, what's going on with the liver? Is the liver congested? And we look at those little markers with the black halos, and well, yeah, that's telling me that the liver is struggling. Maybe it is congested. If that's happening, what's happening? It's putting the gunk back into the bloodstream. All right. Now, if that happens, what's going to happen? The odds are the blood pressure is going to be a little bit increased because of all the gunk in the bloodstream. Not to mention the fact that we've probably got some ammonia, which thickens the blood and also makes it a little bit more viscous, and it makes the heart work a little harder, and it can raise blood pressure. So this is a really good example of going through this thought process and not jumping to conclusions. Okay, we go into the doctors and they're like, well, 114 systolic, you're not doing too bad, you're fine, girl, go home, you haven't got a problem. But we don't do that with this work. We start thinking, we get a little bit more clever and thinking, are these numbers really coming through? Are they really telling us the truth? I don't believe they are. I believe if we fix up the ammonia and we fix up the liver and we start clearing the junk out of the system, those blood pressures will drop, and therefore we would see a bit more of a stronger picture of an electrolyte issue, which I think we have. Okay, so this is a great example to sort of emphasize the importance of doing that. So what we're seeing is a blood pressure and some of these markers that aren't coming up because your blood pressure is artificially high. Okay, clean the system up, it comes down, and it's going to show through. So we're a little bit smarter. We can think a little bit more deeper about this, and we can say, especially because of this marker coming up, that there's an issue there, and I believe that we do have certainly have an issue with minerals not getting into the system. Okay, if we come over to the right hand side here and we start looking at circadian rhythm or cell membranes, once again, not a lot of markers coming up. But as most of you will probably see by now, if we look at this number here, we've got a urine pH of 8, and that's incredibly high. Okay. Not only that, we've got a saliva pH of 6.75, which is just a beautiful pH for saliva, but it's inverted. We talk about inverted pHs. Dr. Kerry Reams talks about inverted pHs being the stroke pattern. Okay, I don't talk about this much because it freaks people out. I've talked to Caroline about this, and I really don't believe that she's in any risk of a stroke as such. But I think what Kerry Reams was trying to emphasize is that this is really completely the wrong way around. What's happening is the body is getting rid of the good stuff and and holding on to the bad stuff. Well, it's not even really holding on to the bad stuff. It's really more, well, where does this 8 come from? How do we get to 8? Where does this come from? What can be so alkaline? Well, ammonia is incredibly alkaline. Maybe it's ammonia. Calcium is very alkaline as well. What happens with calcium? How do we get, well, maybe we got, and calcium thickens the blood as well, and it makes the blood very, very alkaline. Remember, urine pH is measuring, we're talking about filtered blood. It's not necessarily talking about the blood being alkaline, because we need to come down to this box over in the bottom left-hand side, and we need to look at breath rate to confirm that. And we can look at breath rate, we can see it being 10, and that's quite low. That would tell me that the blood is pushing to alkaline. So when we go over to here, up to the top right again, and we see an 8, we can see, well, maybe this is a good sign that the blood is pushing to alkaline, and we start to think, well, where's that coming from? Okay, we've seen some ammonia. Ammonia is very, very alkaline, and I suggest that's probably one of the issues. But if we come down to the bottom left here on the glucose, you can see 93.6. Sorry, this is quite high. This isn't measuring total sugars either. This is just measuring the glucose in the bloodstream. So as soon as I see that, well, I know calcium always will follow sugar. We have high sugars in our bloodstream. The first thing that happens is calcium will gravitate from the tissues into the bloodstream to follow the sugar. When this happens, we get the bloodstream starts to get alkaline. It thickens the blood even more, and you start to see how these sort of issues can start to manifest and start to snowball, if you like. Okay, so first thing I do when I see an inverted numbers like this is to talk to the client and say, well, maybe we need to do a little bit more testing over a few more days just to see if this is consistent. And I can almost guarantee it'll probably move around a little bit, but I suggest it's probably still going to be quite high. And you can also see, well, how do we fix that? Well, there are a number of things we need to do. And ammonia is very high. We need to get rid of the ammonia. The sugars are quite high. We need to manage the sugars. We need to, we need to look at these things, and we need to see the biggest thing here would be, because of the pictures of the dry blood, will be the ammonia. That'll be one of the things we need to look at. Okay. Apart from that, a couple of strong markers here, soft loose stools. Look, it's not this one over here. It's not a massive big issue for Caroline, and she's pointed that out. But it's once we start seeing a little bit of diarrhea happening, well, why do we get diarrhea? What's going on? Well, maybe we're not quenching the acidic chyme coming from the stomach with the bile. Okay, because the bile is quite alkaline. And it's a bile making, it's the alkalinity meeting the acidity of the acidic chyme in the small intestine. This is where digestion happens. So if that isn't happening, we start thinking, well, maybe we have a little bit of bile issues. We have a little bit of gallbladder. Well, then we have a look at this catabolic, which I've got as an imbalance. Well, a catabolic imbalance is a lipid membrane imbalance. It's a lack of sterols, saturated fats. Okay. So when we talk about lipids, we talk about fats. What are we talking about? We're talking about gallbladder. We're talking about gallbladder. Once again, we go back to the pancreas. Okay. Do we have some clues of the gallbladder? Damn right we do. Do we have some clues with the pancreas? Damn right we do. Look at the sugars. The pancreas is responsible for managing sugars and whatnot. So we can start to see some patterns coming together. All right. Not a lot of markers, but it doesn't matter. We just need to think a little bit more closer, a little bit more harder about what's going on. Okay, and we'll do an update on this one as well, because Caroline's going to be doing some testing. Not only that, we'll do an update on the pancreatic stress as well too, because it's going to be interesting. I talked to Caroline today, and I just made this is what you need to do. It's made her aware that I'm seeing some stress there, and when I see stress, anywhere close to the pancreas, especially now, I jump on it. All right, I don't want to freak people out and I don't want to scare people, but I wouldn't be doing my job if I wasn't making people aware that something's going on there and we need to be mindful of it. We need to be aware of it. It doesn't concern me too much right now, but it's something we need to think of. Okay. If we come down to parasympathetic, there's a little bit of autonomic nervous system stress going on there, a little bit of parasympathetic, but you know, it's not a big deal. All right, let's go to another picture. Not much going on here. The acid alkaline balance, we don't talk much about that anyway, but we know breath weight is way too slow. Okay, so the body is trying to hold on to acid to acidify the bloodstream. Why is it trying to do this? What is making the bloodstream alkaline enough for the body to say, I need to slow down breathing? Well, it's because it's too alkaline, because of the calcium and because of the ammonia. We can almost guarantee that. Okay, we come down to digestive capacity. Once again, very little going on here. All right, I rarely see such little red marks, little red boxes coming up, but very rarely do I see that. But the big one here is a little bit of diarrhea. If we have diarrhea, we don't have digestion, something's not working. Okay, and once again, if that's the case, we're not going to be seeing digestion just isn't going to happen. Okay, the body's pushing things through too fast. A catabolic person also will push a lot of fluid through the bowels as well. So you know, this is not just a matter of like looking at digestion, but it's also looking at the cell membranes and looking at those imbalances. And we know we have a catabolic imbalance. This is another confirmation that we probably got a catabolic imbalance. Okay, we start fixing up the catabolic balance. We start slowing down, you know, the movement of the acidic chyme and the digestion. Slow it down a bit. Not a big deal. It's not a big deal because it wasn't a big concern for Caroline, but for us, if we're doing this testing and we're thinking through this, we need to think about this. Okay, once again, we're thinking about this and we're just waiting to see if we see these patterns start to emerge. And we do, and you know what? We always do. I have not done one of these assessments out of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of assessments I've done over the last 5 years that I don't get through the assessment and go like, I got a pretty good clear picture of what's going on, because it all makes sense. I would not see the patterns otherwise. Okay, and I'm not just looking at the blood. I'm not just looking at the numbers. I'm looking at the person. I'm looking at the client. I'm asking questions. I'm thinking about this. What's going on? All right. I work off these solid objective test numbers, but of course we start looking at some of the symptoms as well to give us some clues. All right. And we ask a lot of questions to be able to come up with these numbers and come up with these red boxes. It's just not a one question thing. Okay. When I say it's not just a one question thing, to come up with an imbalance, and for me to call it imbalance, it's not just from one thing. I'm seeing everything. It's a picture. It's an overall picture to look at. All right. So supplement and dietary recommendations. So what I'm going to do, just quickly go through and once again go through my thinking. What did we come up with here? If we look at the top, adrenal cocktails. Many of you are aware of the adrenal cocktail. The adrenal cocktail really is it's just something to give. I used to recommend this for everybody. I sort of stopped it a little bit, and I think I'm going back to everybody. Just most people are going to have a little bit of adrenal stress, and this is really just a bit of a way to get some vitamin C and some potassium into the system that's going to help to help through the cream of tartar to help just give adrenals a little bit of a push, a little bit of a help, a little bit of a support, if you like. And so it's something you can start doing. It's something that for some people it doesn't do anything. For some people it helps them a little bit, but it's like a little bit of an insurance policy. Okay. And we come down to water. Well, once again, that's a no-brainer. And Caroline's pretty up to scratch with all this stuff. We're not struggling too much with water here. But the only thing we need to be wary of or be mindful of with water is being very careful to try and push a catabolic girl or a catabolic boy or man to drink too much water, because quite often what will happen is these people won't be drinking enough water, and they won't be drinking enough water because they have too much diarrhea. And it's not a big issue for Caroline, but it can be that, it can be something that manifests over time, and it's just a natural thing. It's the person just doesn't drink enough water because because they know they might not be mindful of it or conscious of it right now, but it's just something the body knows. If I drink too much water, I have too much diarrhea, and therefore I won't drink water. So what do we got to do? We've got to qualify that person to say to drink more water. We've got to fix up the catabolic imbalance. Okay, pink Celtic sea salt, good salt, 1 to 2 teaspoons spread over the day. A no-brainer, especially persons that are struggling with electrolytes. Okay, this is a no-brainer. We can get some good salt into us. We've got good minerals, good electrolytes. Okay, grounding and earthing. I think this is something that Caroline was aware of, but maybe not doing as well as she could, or even doing it at all. And this is, once again, a bit of a no-brainer, but you know, how many of you actually consciously go and do some grounding, or have a grounding mat or a grounding device at work or whatever, or at home, or go out barefoot? And some of you living in a country you can't do that, a cold country and whatnot. But you know, this is standard protocol for me right up front. Okay, borax, once again, no-brainer, borax or boron. Okay, especially people that we know are struggling for minerals. Okay, boron, it's going to help the body hold on to minerals. Specifically, it's going to help the cells hold on to magnesium. If we don't have magnesium, there's a lot of things that just won't happen for obvious reasons. MSM, very interesting, this one. I will always confirm with a catabolic person through my I sort of leave this in for most people, because MSM is just such a massive liver detoxer, and we know we've got some liver stress. So I left it in here, but the first thing I do is talk to the client and say, well, do we confirm whether this is a catabolic imbalance, and how strong is the catabolic imbalance? And when I think with Caroline, I did discuss that we'll hold off on MSM at the moment, but we'll put it on there so that we know we've got a record of that. Okay. An anabolic person will love MSM. A lot of catabolic people will like MSM as well. But if you know, it's one of these things. MSM is very, very catabolic inducing, which is why MSM can give you diarrhea. Okay, it opens up cell membranes, it gets things moving, it pushes you more catabolic. D-limonene, a no-brainer. This is standard protocol these days for me. D-limonene. And even more important for a client like Caroline, we know we've got some gallbladder issues, we know we've got some liver issues, we're going to have gallstones for sure. And what does D-limonene do? It helps dissolve gallstones. All right, so and it helps with liver detoxification as well. It's just a beautiful product. Okay, you only need to take one of these bottles every few months, but let's do it. Let's give the client some. Take some for the month, and just know that you are, it's like an insurance policy again. You know, you have no guarantees what's going on. You have no guarantees that you have gallstones. But if we look at all the clues that we're looking at so far, we can be pretty sure, can't we? All right, alpha-ketoglutarate. Once again, this is all about, well, if we look up until now, we're not doing much other than enabling, dealing with things at that fundamental basic level. All right, I think I talked to Caroline about this whole work. I will stress this so many times. This is not about healing. We can't heal anything. Our body heals us. All we can do is give ourselves the right environment for our body to heal. Give it the right conditions for our body to heal. All right. So what are we? If we're working in this industry, we're enablers. I'm an enabler. Okay. We have to enable the body to do its job as opposed to fixing. All right. The body can fix us. There's no way that we have the ability to be able to match the complexities of the healing system. It's incredible, and it's very, very complex. So all we need to do is enable it to do its job, and this is what we're doing. And up until, if we come down right up until now, all this stuff here, this is just enabling. This is just laying the groundwork. You know, do we have a body that has the ability to heal itself? Because if it doesn't, how on earth is it going to heal? We start doing some of this other wonderful stuff, which is a lot of people doing. We'll take this wonderful product and this, it makes us feel better. You know, and it will do this, and it will do it for a while, and then it will just revert back to, we have an imbalance, we have a body that can't heal, and we're never going to experience optimal health. We're never going to experience vital health because we're addressing things at the wrong level. We haven't fixed the foundation. We built the beautiful home. It looks beautiful, looks wonderful. Oh, isn't it glorious? Look at that. Oh, look at that. It's just so wonderful. But what's going to happen? It's going to start falling down because it doesn't have the foundations in place. It doesn't have the robustness. So when things start going wrong, it all comes crumbling down. All right? This is all about building the foundation, and then the house and the body will start manifesting itself. We're healing machines. Okay? We have the machine. We can't duplicate that. We can't replicate that. We're kidding ourselves. We're kidding ourselves if we think we're healers. We're not healers. We're enablers. Okay. So the alpha-ketoglutarate is all about the high ammonia. Alpha-ketoglutarate will drop ammonia like a brick in 2 or 3 days. It's going to take you, and you'll know that. You'll have clearer thinking. Any brain fog will go away. You'll feel a little bit lighter. Your skin, your eyes will feel a little bit clearer because we got a little bit more flow. We're not pumping around crude oil anymore. Okay. Is it going to happen to everybody? Not necessarily, because not everybody's going to have this problem. But it's something that if we start seeing these markers in the dry blood, and especially if it's backed up with brain fog and fatigue, which it isn't so much with Caroline, it doesn't matter. Take some. This stuff isn't that expensive. Just do it. Okay. And for a lot of you, you know, you're gonna notice this, and you'll notice it. And it's not something you take and you don't notice it. It's something you take and you will notice. All right. So now we're laying the groundwork, and one of the things I wanted to do, especially with Caroline, because she's breastfeeding, is we want to just give things a little bit of a boost. I don't believe she needs a lot of resources. She's producing a lot of milk for a baby. I mean, she's just produced a baby. That's an enormous drain on resources to start with. So the concentrates mineral drops is really something that's just, you know, I'm not into, you know, I'm obviously, as most of you will know, very, very big on, you know, making sure that we have a body that can be able to, you know, get the most out of your diet. And you know, as long as you're eating a half decent diet, if you've got a machinery to be able to extract the nutrients out, we don't have a problem. We don't really need to start adding in minerals. But with the pictures that's coming through and some of the numbers, and I really believe that electrolytes are a little bit low. We've got that resting to standing pulse difference, that green marker that came up. So I'm thinking, you know what, get some of this stuff and start taking it, because you just need a little bit more help, especially because you're breastfeeding. Let's get some resources, because we don't want you to breastfeed for the next God knows how many months and then have to look back and go like, well, now I'm starting to manifest some of these issues because I've really drained my system. All right. Magnesium chloride oil. I like magnesium chloride. Why? It's very easy to get into the system. It's very easy to apply. You don't need a good digestive system to get it. Caroline's breath rate is very low. Chloride, the chloride part of this deal will increase breath rate just a little bit. We want to do that. We want to acidify the bloodstream a little bit, and the chloride will do that. Chloride will also help with digestion. We know we've got some digestive issues going on probably, so the chloride is going to help produce hydrochloric acid. All right, so it's a key part of the makeup. And we know we've got to get some magnesium into this girl, because everybody needs magnesium. The body's gone through some stress. We've had a baby, and you know, I just love this stuff. It's a very, very good way of increasing magnesium levels in the body, and you know, we're killing two birds with the same stone. All right, so we've got to think about magnesium. We've got to think about any minerals, what they come in with. Okay, you know, magnesium glycinate wouldn't have done the same job. All right. Magnesium malate, yeah, maybe not too bad. That would have acidified the bloodstream a little bit, but the chloride's going to help with digestion as well. We know we need a bit of help with that too, and it's easier to get into the body as well, which I like. Okay, we make this as easy as possible. Digestozyme, or a good digestive enzyme down here. Look, we haven't got a lot of stuff coming up with digestive issues. I know there's something going on. There must be, otherwise we'd have the mineral levels we need. It may be just the fact that Caroline's had had a baby, and that's all. But look, let's give a little bit more digestive help by getting some good digestive enzymes. Caroline's age 2, a little bit older than 32. She's moving on, and as we know, or we should know, once we hit 32 years old, we start to our body's ability to produce enzymes starts to drop off quite dramatically. Which is why when we get into our 40s and we still live the way we did when we were in our 30s, we start running into issues. Okay, beet flow for the liver, for the bile, very, very important, especially if you are taking hydrochloric acid. Not so important with digestive, but because we know we've got some bile issues with and some liver issues with Caroline. Taking some beet flow or something to really just thin the bile out and get things moving is going to be quite important. Right down the bottom, Phostrops. This is one of the products, I've talked about it before, when we have inverted pHs. I will always look at Phostrops, because what we need to do, if it is an issue after Caroline's done some more testing, we need to push that urine pH down ASAP. All right, we need to switch it around. And when I'm talking about switching those inverted pHs down, you've got to jump on this. If you experience this yourself with inverted pHs, which is urine pH higher than saliva pH, I can almost guarantee you're not going to be feeling right. Okay, there's going to be some weird stuff going on. Wasn't exactly the case with Caroline, which is why I'm getting her to do some more testing. But we need to turn that around. And when we turn that around, this is one of I guess one of the interventions that we can make that can really have quite a significant impact if this is a problem. Meaning that it's like pushing, when we have these inverted pHs, it's like driving a car that won't start, or it's very cluggy. It's sort of backfiring. It's not working very well because the things just aren't in the right order. And what we need to do is push that. We need to give that car a bump start. We need to give it a push. And what happens when you're trying to bump start a car that's a little bit hard to start? All of a sudden it just takes off and it's no problem. And it's the same. It can be the same with our pHs. We need to give our pHs a bit of a push start. And we can do that with Phostrops. You can do it with ascorbic acid sometimes too, but ascorbic acid sometimes can affect the saliva pH. We don't want to do that, but you can try the ascorbic acid as well, just that Phostrops do a much better job of it. Also, Phostrops, if we have high calcium levels in the bloodstream, the calcium to phosphoric acid ratio is going to be out of whack. So you can start to see, well, why didn't I pick ascorbic acid? Well, I picked Phostrops because it's going to be a 1-2 bang again. This is going to be like killing two birds with the same stone. We're going to be bringing down the alkalinity, and we're going to be making the blood a little bit more acidic. At the same time, we're going to be pushing the calcium back into the tissues. Okay, this is a difference with this testing. This is a difference with this work. Okay. We start getting very, very smart and very clever about this, because we're starting to think logically through this and not just looking at a book or not just doing some study on how things work and how they should work, because that's not how it is. We're dealing with broken bodies. We're dealing with brokenness. We have to understand the structure of brokenness to be able to start repairing it, because the body isn't like it should be. Okay? You open up the textbook, and you look at, well, this is how this works. No, it doesn't work like that. That's in a body that's in perfect condition. All right? That's like, a car that's broken down. You don't just take it to another fuel station and try and give it another fuel to see if it will work. You've got to go take it to the mechanic. The mechanic's got to lift the bonnet. He's got to look at it and start understanding some of the systems that work together to make that car work and fix it. And you're not going to know what that is until you start looking. Okay? So this is where the Phostrops come in. Okay, so this is where we're at with Caroline. I think, this is going to be an interesting case because of the pancreas, because of the those stresses. I'm going to be very interested in seeing where things go. Because of those high pHs, and 8 is incredibly high. I don't believe that. I think it's probably just an errant pH, but I do believe it may be still a little bit higher than what it should be. And we'll do an update on this too a little bit down the track. And I'm going to encourage Caroline to do some further blood testing, maybe in another 6 weeks or so, just to see if those stresses are coming through the same, any worse, or any better. Okay. All right, fantastic. Well, that's the end of this session. I think this is a great example. I think this, we don't always get a good example to teach about. I think we've looked at a lot of variables. There can be some confusing stuff in there if we didn't go through this thinking. And I think most of you agree that this session has been quite educational. It's educational for me too. Going through this, it's wonderful to see these things. It's wonderful to talk to the client and start correlating some of this stuff, because it all starts making sense and it all starts giving you some confidence that you know what you're talking about. And I certainly have the confidence that I know what I'm talking about. Okay, and it's because we're looking at a lot of things, and we're not just looking at the textbook. We're just not looking at how things are supposed to work. We're understanding the structure of the brokenness, and we're starting to use a little bit of science, a little bit of logic, and a little bit of nous and a little bit of experience to pull things together and get things back on track. Okay, so thanks very much. I'm going to stop this now, and we're going to be doing a Q&A on this next Sunday. And I'm going to be, for those of you that are watching this today, I'm going to be doing the energy production straight after this session 2, so I'll have that released a little bit later this afternoon or tonight. Okay, thanks for sitting in, guys. We'll talk to you all again very, very soon. Okay, bye-bye.